Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Framing Chronicles. I'm your host, Sheila McCumbee from Strategies for Success. And today we're going to be talking about disaster preparedness. And I have a wonderful special guest, Jennifer McGinnis, is going to be talking to us about how her shop survived through Hurricane Katrina and also through the Gulf oil spill. Now, it's hard to believe, but in August, we're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of that disastrous hurricane. And remember that Hurricane Katrina, for those of you who are maybe too young to remember or just little kids when it happened, it was a Category 3 storm, and it made landfall on August 29th, 2005. It caused over $200 billion in damage in today's dollars and was one of the costliest U.S. hurricanes ever. Now, New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, of course, devastation was all over, but New Orleans bore the brunt of the devastation. And due to catastrophic levee failures, and that stemmed from some design flaws. The system was about 50 years old, and as the waves started to come in, they were overtopped by the storm surge. And the inadequate construction materials really led to an incomplete flood protection system. And also, New Orleans is a little unique because it is built on the Mississippi Delta. The soil is very porous, sedimentary, sandy kind of soil. And so it kind of compacts as the city that's called land subsidence. And so New Orleans itself was actually below sea level. So when the levees broke, the water came in and filled up the whole town, just like a swimming pool. Now, 2 decades later, Katrina's impact persists. Thousands of people were permanently displaced. And when they started to rebuild the town, that led to gentrification. The people who had originally lived there couldn't afford to move back. And all those problems, of course, exacerbating socioeconomic disparity that are still disproportionately vast today. And of course, those disparities affect the most vulnerable populations. Now, the survivors faced long-term mental and physical health challenges and are still suffering from PTSD and health problems that happened due to mold and other bad chemicals and things like that that got released when Hurricane Katrina came through. Now, the storm destroyed an estimated 20,000 small businesses in New Orleans, with many people struggling to recover due to lost customers, of course, disrupted infrastructure, supply chain problems, and difficulties accessing federal aid. Jennifer McGinnis had a successful little frame shop in Gretna, Louisiana. Now, Gretna is just across the Mississippi from New Orleans. High winds and flooding from Hurricane Katrina destroyed her beautiful little shop. Luckily, she was able to evacuate with her family to Texas and ride the storm. She came back. She was met with devastation. And not to make light of it, but it looks literally like her came through her frame shop, and it did. But, at least the toilet made it. The sign's a little blurry, but it says, "We will be closed until Katrina is gone." Little did Jennifer know that was going to be for many, many months. Now, her poor picture windows are now, it's an open patio to see that. And then, of course, the ceiling tiles and everything. You know what? Those little Morso choppers can survive anything. It's a little dirty, but clean her up and good to go. and it's not a good day when your ceiling is on your design counter. And I want to draw attention to the back where her frame chevrons are still hanging. She, she frame samples on her back wall. I think that is a testament to Velcro and the power of Velcro. He's still stuck on the wall even after a tornado, literal tornado. And of course, the damage was just absolutely heartbreaking. But through it all, there's sweet little Jennifer smiling through all the chaos. And something we don't think about or realize sometimes when there are natural disasters in an area is that it's not only the businesses that suffer, but people live there too. So Jennifer's home, luckily, it had some pretty substantial damage, but nothing too terrible. Was about a quarter of the way damaged. And even though that's devastating and not a good day, the home was still habitable. So they could live in there. They were trying to get her business back up and running and rebuild their lives. So she was able to rebuild. And of course, she got to celebrate her successes with her friends and family. And for a while, everything was going hunky dory until 2010, just less than 5 years later. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill, which killed 11 workers, severely impacted New Orleans' small business sector, despite no direct oil contamination in the city. So you can imagine the tourism industry suffered a significant downturn due to public perception of a polluted Gulf, and this caused substantial losses for all local businesses. Poor little bird. The spill also devastated the Gulf's fishing and seafood industries, crippling commercial operations and small family businesses. And consumer confidence was very slow to rebound. Now, while some large settlements were reached with BP, many small businesses struggled with the complex claims process. Of course, they don't want to pay. And those small businesses were often receiving insufficient compensation for their immediate and long-term losses. And this highlights a profound and far-reaching consequence of environmental disasters on local economies. So, my sweet special guest on the Framing Chronicles today is a testament to the power of perseverance and the critical importance of disaster preparedness. So, we're joined today by my friend Jennifer McGinnis. She is a certified picture framer and the owner of Creative Framing in Gretna, Louisiana. Jennifer's story is an extraordinary one. She rebuilt her business and her life after the unimaginable destruction of Hurricane Katrina, and then again after the profound impact of the 2010 Gulf oil spill. She's not just a business owner, she's a survivor, a thriver, and an absolute champion who has invaluable insights into safeguarding your business against future challenges. And it's just a privilege to have her here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Framing Chronicles. I'm Sheila McCumbee, your host from Strategies for Success. And today I'd like to introduce my special guest, Jennifer McGinnis. And Jennifer is coming to us from the great state of Louisiana. And she is a framer. How long have you been framing, Jennifer?
24 years.
24 years. So just starting out, just barely. But Jennifer, she has this super amazing shop called Creative Framing, and it's located in, am I going to say the name of the town right? In Louisiana?
Gretna.
Gretna. Okay, in Gretna, Louisiana. So tell us kind of where is Gretna located in Louisiana?
It is just on the other side of the Mississippi River from New Orleans, so I'm
Okay.
about 10 minutes from the city.
Very cool. And so tell me a little bit about your story and how did you get into framing? That you're one of the you've been in it so long and I'm sure you have a lot of experiences to talk about. But yeah, how did you get into framing and why do you like it so much?
Well, when I was 17, I got a job working for the original owners, which at the time it was called Creative Hang Ups. And I worked there for about a week. I was just learning the backing. And I was a 17-year-old child who had a party when her parents left town, and I did no call, no show. And I got fired from Creative Hangups.
Oh my gosh.
And when I was 26, my sister called and said, my partner's retiring and doesn't want to deal with the kids in the business. Do you want to buy into the business? But that's the only exposure I had had was that 1 week
Oh wow.
when I was 17. And I was in the corporate world managing a DSW shoe warehouse, making great money, but working 80 hours a week for somebody else. And I just simply said, yes, I'll do it. So I quit my job, packed up from Fort Worth, and moved home to New Orleans without even a second thought, bought a house, and started working.
Very
And that
cool.
was 2001.
2001. And then how did the business progress? So how did you go from kind of being a brand newbie to moving because you are a CPF now and what was the process of going through that? How did you
Well, it
get
was a
to where you
hard
are now?
start. I
Hmm.
had the old partner worked with me and trained me, and then my sister would work with me every once in a while and train me. So I was that really loosely trained employee.
Hmm.
And honestly, 6 months in, I was on my hands and knees in front of the wall cutter, broken down, crying. I don't know how to do this. I never learned to read a ruler. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then I sucked it up and said, you don't have a choice. You now own this place. You got to figure it out. So I just did the best I could and learned from them because we didn't have internet availability to learn. There were no classes to see. There wasn't YouTube to teach us anything. So
Right.
I just did the best I could. Um, and so really I only got 4 years of experience before Katrina happened. So I was
Hmm.
very new even when that happened.
So this is probably like around what, 96, 97-ish, 1997.
2001 was when I bought it.
Oh, okay.
And so I worked from 2001 up to 2005
Okay.
with my partner. And then
Okay.
post Katrina, I purchased from her once we rebuilt, and I owned it solely from 2005 to now.
Hmm. But you made a go of it, just kind of buying it outright. So that
Yeah.
worked out pretty well. What do you think made you successful in doing that? Starting out brand new, how did you make it work?
Um, a lot of practice and a lot of hours. I mean,
Mhm.
I knew the basics, and so everything else I just there's a lot of things I probably framed that were incorrect over the years, and I can think of some. I'm like, oh, I wish they would come back so I could fix it right.
Mhm.
But
But you are the only person with that problem. I framed everything perfect. I know
right,
I'll see things sometimes on framers pages. I'll see, oh, this is the correct way to do this. I'm like, uh-oh, I
right,
did it the wrong way. Well, nobody's come back in 30 years. I guess it's still okay, but oh gosh.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much every job I've ever had, I've taught myself because training was
Mhm.
never good. I always did retail and then retail management, and I was just left at my own vices to figure it out myself.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did. And I was also a training manager prior to quitting the corporate world. So when I hired part timers, I already knew how to train people to do stuff. So I knew exactly how to train people to do what I knew. And so that helped to be able to train people. But the
Mhm.
previous owner stayed on with me for a number of years after. So she was always there to help and let me ask questions and stuff.
Cool. Maybe tell me a little bit about that process. What do you think the secrets are to training your employees to help them to be successful?
Ah, well, the way I train is I give them the worst case scenario of what I'm teaching
Hmm.
them so that they
Okay.
don't have to make their mistakes and
Mhm.
cost me money because I don't like to charge employees when they
Oh,
make
no.
mistakes,
Yeah, no.
obviously. So as I'm teaching them, I say, this is the way it's done, but watch out for this, this, and this. You won't cut your finger off that way.
Hmm. Yeah. Good thing.
So I always lay it out. And I've done all the mistakes and I explain that. So if you just follow this process, you won't make these mistakes. And it's worked out. I've trained 4 different people over the years.
Oh. Any, any day without bloodshed in the shop is a good day.
Yeah.
We're always
Yes. And we have had bloodshed, but
absolutely.
I told you not to put your hands there.
If I ever go missing and you need my DNA, just find something I framed because there's a really good chance
Yeah.
there's some of my blood in there or God knows what. But yeah, I you always forget about all the micro cuts on your hands until you put hand sanitizer on. You're like, yeah, it burns.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, and then so it sounds like yeah, you're going through and saying, hey, this is the worst case scenario, and very much like kind of one-on-one when you're training your employees, because that's something that a lot of framers do struggle with. Um, so that's kind of what would you tell a framer that's like, I got these employees to train, but I'm doing a bad job. What should I do?
Be more detailed with
Okay.
the step process. I don't mean to be mean or disrespectful by saying it, but treat everybody like they're stupid and they've never done it before.
Hmm.
Because if you've been to Michael's or something, you don't want it done that way, just simply starting. Because this last employee I had, she had worked multiple places. I said, that's how you
Hmm.
do it everywhere else. This is how it's to be done here. So, and I also let people know it is time consuming.
Hmm.
I've had people, well, maybe I can come to work for you part time. I said, I don't have time to train
Yeah.
you. And I'm straightforward. I don't have time to train you. I'd rather work the 60 hours and get it all done than to work 90 to slow down to show you. So I
Yeah.
warn people, if you're going to train new employees, it's going to take time. It's going to slow you down to half speed,
Hmm.
and then those of us that are older and are moving slower anyway, then it drops us to quarter speed.
Yeah, right. Well, and I found too, I tried. I mean, I'm sure I was not a perfect boss, but when mistakes are made, I really tried not to lose my temper and give some grace because we all make mistakes all the time and just be like, okay, well, this was an expensive mistake. We learned from it. We're not going to do it again, right? Um, and but make them correct it. I wasn't going to correct their mistake for them, but show them how this is what you need to do. But yeah, you're gonna have to correct this mistake. And I kind of broke things up into like we're gonna for a new employee, I kind of preferred hiring someone without any framing experience because then they didn't have bad habits and do it the way I wanted to do. I wanted them to follow the CPF guidelines. This is, what we do. But it'd be like, okay, we're going to talk about glass, and this is how we cut glass, and this is how we handle glass. So you're going to cut glass. You're going to be the glass cutter for a week. And when you pass that, then we'll move up to, using the wall cutter and doing all the things, learning how to do that. So we just kind of go from station to station. And when they mastered something, they get a little bit of a bump in salary. And that helped them stay on. And by the time they learned how to do everything, then they were getting paid a little bit more, but they were worth it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, training's always a big issue. So we're doing fine. Everything's going great. Your shop was making money. You got customers coming in. And then 2005 happens. And then what happened in 2005?
Well,
Little
um,
storm came by.
yes. So it was funny, actually. I was out of town at the end of July, no, beginning of August. I was in Florida during hurricane season at a baby shower, and we started getting reports of the storm in the Gulf.
Mhm.
And so, unfortunately, it was headed straight for where we were in the Naples area at that time. It's like, okay, well, we have to hurry up and get home. Then we started to see all the other reports. Katrina was just there in the Gulf covering everything. So we rushed home from this baby shower into this situation. And with hurricanes, it's really hard to be organized in one aspect because I had only lived there for since 2001, 4 years back at home after spending 10 years away. Well, I was a child prior to that, so I didn't know how to pack up and evacuate.
Yeah.
So then I've now got a home and a business to pack up and evacuate.
Hmm.
I really, it's all over the place because then you're watching the news for days on end. Do I have to leave? Do I have to leave? Do I have to leave? And then suddenly they're like, everybody's got to leave. And so it's just,
Ah.
yeah.
So what type of things were they, what did you have to do to prepare to for the storm?
Well, for the business, I didn't prepare anything.
Okay.
So my sister as a partner was kind of just for fun. It wasn't her livelihood. Her husband worked, supported the family. She just, minimum. I just want to have minimum everything, minimum insurance coverage, minimum cost of this. Well, we don't
Mm.
have to do anything. This is fine. It's been through all the other storms. So we basically just locked up the door, put our little sign on the door, said we'll be closed until Katrina is gone. And then we didn't come home for a month or more. So the prep was just lock up the doors. Let's go get all of our things at the house, our pictures and everything else that's important to us. And you pack up and you try to leave. And at that point, everybody was trying to leave. And I wasn't worried about the business. I didn't care about it. I knew I had insurance. We just had to figure out how to get out of town, which for most of us in that, people don't believe it, but it took 24 driving hours to get to Fort Worth for us. It took my other family 24 driving hours to get to Austin. Like simple driving was not easy at that point either. So
Mhm.
I did nothing for the business at all for preparation.
Just getting whatever's
Yeah.
important and
Yeah.
going the
Paperwork. I
business.
had some minimal
Yeah.
insurance paperwork. Just
Hmm.
and you think back to 2005, we didn't have laptops. We had to press 3 times to text cell phones.
Hmm. Yeah.
It wasn't as easy as today.
No,
So,
not
you're at the
definitely.
library trying to sign into your account. And so that's where
Mm.
organization really was taught to me.
Wow. Wow. And so you went from your home to Fort Worth and kind of hunkered down there and then what was it like watching all the devastation on the news and stuff? What happened with that?
Well, there wasn't much access up there. We were so
Oh,
far
okay.
away that it wasn't the daily news. It was, oh, there's this report. Oh, there's that report. So we actually sat in our vehicle and had to tune in to XM radio because my friend didn't have cable. Not a lot of
Hmm.
people had it. So we couldn't watch news channels.
Yeah.
The cell phones were out, so I could only text family, and only people who were like on T-Mobile, AT&T, all the cell towers were down. So whatever news we could get from XM radio was all that we could get. And so I'd hear a report of, well, there's a tornado that went down La Palco in Manhattan, which is where my shop was. And I'm like, oh no, it took out the Circle K. That's across the street. And
Oh,
then nothing. That's all I knew. I couldn't reach anybody. We got warning that all gable houses were failing. Well, my house was a gable roof. And I'm like, well, that's all I knew. Those two
yeah.
things were all I knew for at least 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we had to contend, like, I had to go into the emergency room. I had back problems. I had sciatica. I had no doctors to see. I was out of medication. I couldn't get my refills. So I spent my birthday in the ER
Oh,
trying to get doctor care. And they were treating us like all the other refugees. Like, well, we can't give you your prescriptions. We don't prescribe those. We can't reach your doctor. We can't. And so it's like, I just sat around in pain for
oh my
because
gosh.
all those things damage your sciatic where you're sitting in a
Hmm.
car, sitting around not
Oh,
doing
sure.
anything. There's nothing you can do. So that
Sure.
was very rough to for that process of just trying to get back home because nobody could go home.
Yeah.
Um, so we were out for a full 2 weeks with no information at all.
Oh my gosh. What a nightmare. And then you're just laying in bed thinking the worst, or just were you just
Yep.
not thinking about it at all, or
Oh, you think about it 24/7. What am I going to
yeah,
come home to? What am I going to come home to?
right.
And finally, we're like, well, let's just try to get closer, get information. Because as a business owner, you register for special placards to put on your vehicle to get back into the parish, which is a county for those that don't know. And so we can do that ahead of most normal residents because we own a business. And so that's what we did. We got as close as we could. We had our placard, and when they said you can start coming back in, there was one road in and one road out. So that's when we got back to town to survey the damage.
Well, this is painful to talk about, but how was that driving back?
Well, it was terrible. It was
Yeah. I
that's I
mean,
didn't even I
obvious
left those
question. I mean,
pictures
I'm
out.
sure it was really fun. It's like, oh, it's like
It
Disneyland, except oh
was
yeah.
really weird. So we were commuting from Lafayette.
Hmm.
Lafayette is about 2.5 hours from New Orleans. And that was not an interstate commute because the interstates were basically shut down. It was an old Highway 90 commute. And so we commuted in that first day and everything. You've got boats on the side of the interstate that floated there and cars and everything. There was no traffic. There was
Hmm.
military everywhere. The helicopters. So we were one of the first in. Couldn't stay in my house. My electricity was ripped off the house, so we didn't have anywhere to stay for a little while. You weren't allowed. You were in and out by dark. There was
Okay.
no power. It wasn't safe to be there. People that did stay, we talked to some of the neighbors. They're like, no, leave after dark. You need to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the strangest thing during all that process was there were no noises. There's no traffic. There's no birds. There's no crickets. Like
Oh.
total silence, day or night. Everything had gotten washed out. So that was the most memorable thing, was just
Oh.
not hearing anything.
Yeah, because if you've been down south, I mean, there's always crickets and cicadas and other
Frogs
things.
and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, frogs
Or
especially.
at least
Yeah.
birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just silence. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, left, I guess. Everybody left. And then like what about how bad was the devastation to all the businesses in your area? Was everything just wiped out or
Pretty much. So in my area, we didn't have rising water. We didn't have the flooding that New Orleans
mm,
had in their little bowl, but we had all the little tornado offshoots. And so the
okay.
tornadoes are, if not more devastating than flood, it's ripping things back. Um, my roof was ripped back. My windows were collapsed in. Um, Pretty much every business had damage. Every single business had damage. There weren't any houses
Mm,
that didn't have some kind of damage, minimal to lots. I was blessed with my home because only about a quarter of it was messed up. Part of my roof ripped back, and only the way my house was set up is only a little quarter of it. So I was able to live there during renovations once we got power. But again, it was about 3 months before we even got power back.
yeah. And this might be hard to talk about, and if you don't want to, that's okay. But like what kind of thoughts and emotions regarding the future of your business, the future of your life, what was running through your head when you saw the devastation?
You know, it's so hard to put myself back there
Hmm.
because it was just in shock, and we're just looking. It's like, okay, well, I feel sense of gratitude because my house is not destroyed. I didn't lose everything in my house like most
Hmm.
people did.
Hmm.
That was wonderful. So those pictures, all the little things that were important to me, I still had. When it came to the business, I just cried. I had a friend and my ex-husband, and we were the three of us there. We first walked up, and I just cried. And then it became difficult because my sister, who was my partner, she was off with the kids. She couldn't come back, and she's fussing at me. Well, you got to get there. You got to do this. So we're going back and forth, and I'm doing all the work. Having a partner during that time did not work out too well. So it
Hmm.
just added to the stress. And I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't understand. It's not like you could just snap a picture and text a picture. There was no
Right.
texting pictures at the time. So I
No.
I'm trying to explain to her. Her husband had gone in to look to grab the money out the register or what he couldn't. He couldn't explain to her either. And
Yeah.
she was just sitting on the beach drinking her margaritas or whatever she was doing,
Like
yelling
I'll
and
trade
screaming
you,
at
trade
me. And I'm
places.
like, I am doing what I can do. I don't, and that we haven't even discussed that since then because it was such
Yeah.
a sensitive subject at the time.
Yeah. Did you, and you probably, how long did it take them to get like electricity and water hooked back up?
I don't even know how long the power was. So it took, it's so hard to say. I think in late September, they actually built wooden surroundings around the building to secure the building, to
Mhm.
secure my property. So that was getting contractors in because they actually had to build permanent wood structure around everything to not allow people to just come and go.
Right.
Um, Power might have come back in October, possibly, because that was like my house was different. That was ripped off of the house. I had to have a
Right.
special electrician come, but connecting, I'd say power probably started to come back late September into early October.
So
So
at
at
least,
least 4 to 6 weeks.
yeah, a couple months,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. So
close
when
to
we were
that.
in there, like we had to secure the property before it was ever any wood was built. So right away, I started going through, pulling out anything that wasn't broken, anything that
Mhm.
wasn't wet. I had fiberglass every single day just all over me because of
Ugh.
all the ceiling tiles. Everything was covered in
Right.
fiberglass. And you're out there, yeah, thank goodness for the Red Cross. They would come around with food, or we'd get the MREs from the military. And that was the only
Right.
access we had to food and water was the emergency
Hmm.
services.
Because
Otherwise, you come in with what you can because nothing's open.
right. Because water's not safe to drink, and
No,
if you could even get water, so wow,
right.
that's
And
crazy.
and that's I don't even think about those things. Like I wouldn't have thought about drinking out of the tap because I knew better. And I don't know water service to power service. It's all jumbled a lot still.
Right. And what about like the waste removal and stuff? Because you got all the stupid ceiling tiles that are all soaked and stuff and they're
Oh,
ruined. And
that took years. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we had stuff piled out for a good year and a half to 2 years after that because there was so much. They would start with businesses first, residential
Mhm.
last. So slowly but surely. And I wish I had kept a record of that, like the
Mhm.
debris removal, but it had to be at least by January before we had any debris removed.
Took forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned the Red Cross. Were there any other support systems or resources that were were helpful during those days?
Um, Besides Red Cross, I can't think of too many. I'm sure some of the churches, like they had distribution points, but they would give out the MREs and the water,
Hmm.
trash bags, cleaning supplies.
Because FEMA wasn't even really a thing then, right?
It was, but they
Kinda.
weren't boots on the ground FEMA.
Yeah.
They gave us all $1,500. Here's $1,500. That's your emergency payment. Here you go.
Woohoo.
Yeah,
Thanks. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. I mean, it's something, but
So
yeah, not even close to enough.
no, and a
Yeah.
lot of people ended up having to pay it back because they, for whatever reason, they had to prove this or that. It was really a mess.
And they need the paperwork, but yeah, the paperwork was destroyed. So what am I supposed
Right,
to do?
right. I
Yeah,
can't
that's
prove
crazy.
sales because everything got wet.
Yeah, right. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time too, you didn't really have the ability to digitally back up things as much. So
Right, right.
that could be really, really difficult. So you're starting to rebuild your shop. Did you decide, I mean, you had some decisions to make whether you wanted to go on or whether you wanted to just throw in the towel. So what happened after you got back and you started clearing things out? Did you decide to rebuild or change locations or what happened?
Well, I decided to rebuild because it was, of course, the landlord's responsibility to build the
Mhm.
structure.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the work tables I have still because they were covered in carpet. I just took all that out. The wood was fine. It wasn't overly moldy because I had other equipment that was messed up. But it just came down to when I processed insurance and saw how underinsured we were. I think I had content for 35,000 for the entire store of
Oh gosh.
everything. What does that buy? Two pieces of equipment, maybe.
Yeah.
So I collected that, and it wasn't enough to do anything with. So I'm like, well, I have to open back up, and
Mhm.
probably timeline wise, once the wood was built and people started to flow back into their houses and find damage, people were knocking on that wood. I'm not open. I'm sorry. I don't have equipment. You can come in, but I don't have equipment.
Mhm.
And it became a steady flow of people because I had had so much clientele prior to that, 30 years of clientele prior to that.
Yeah.
They just started flowing in and flowing in, and everybody had damaged artwork.
Mhm.
Everybody had to have something repaired. And so I just couldn't turn it down as they started flowing in. I didn't have a choice at that point. I just took it all in and did what I could. Most of it was just remove it, air it out, clean it up.
Mhm.
And so it was more of, well, people are coming, so I'm just going to keep doing this because I'm
That
making
kind of
money and I'll make enough to replace everything.
that kind of gets to be the silver lining when you have a disaster, as awful as it is. I know I've talked about before my shop in Alaska. We had a big earthquake and it did about $30,000 worth of damage to my store. And this is on the Monday right after Small Business Saturday in December. And I just, yeah, blew out three of my big picture windows and I just sat in the parking lot and wept. Like my beautiful, beautiful store is just in pieces. But we cleaned up, got ready, and the blessing was that everybody's pictures had fallen off the wall. And so I ordered a couple pallets of glass because we just had glass replacements all through that, in addition to our regular Christmas orders that thank God nothing got damaged, which
Mm-hmm.
was a miracle. And I got one little chip on a frame that was easy to fix. And so we still had our regular Christmas orders, and we kind of got a reprieve because their houses were so messed up. Nobody was in a hurry to get their stuff anymore. So it
Mm-hmm.
all worked out. But yeah, those repairs that got us back up on our feet. It wasn't a way I would pick, but it's what
Yeah.
happened from that, you know.
Yeah. We called ours the Katrina bubble because it
Yeah.
lasted for quite some time, 2005. So I didn't reopen until 2006, probably late January, February time, I guess I might have
Hmm.
reopened. Um, it lasted till 2010. Like we had a good 5 year bubble. My, standard 2 week wait, standard 2 week wait. After
Hmm.
Katrina, I had 6 month wait. People didn't
Hmm.
even blink twice. Oh, six
Yeah.
months? Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
And so during that bubble, I completely overlooked the economy in 2008. I had no idea what was going on because I was only in my bubble of
Oh,
recovery,
yeah.
recovery,
Yeah.
work, work, work. And I relocated in 2008.
Hmm.
This great place. Look at all this money I'm making. Let me go to this great place. And I was
Hmm.
just booking it there too. And then we had the 2010 oil spill, BP,
Oh, yeah.
which then devastated our economy. And we are greatly affected by the oil industry here in custom
Hmm.
framing. And
Hmm.
there we go. Disaster number two threw me in. And it was like,
Because
oh,
at this point, you're
it
like,
took me,
really, God? Really?
yeah.
Honestly, I don't
Well,
know.
it gave me a clarity to the bubble I was in as well.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, there people are having financial issues and from 2008. I didn't realize that. So it
Yeah.
puts you into a blinders on situation where you're not paying attention to the rest of the world because you're only surviving,
Hmm.
and you don't
Yeah,
make the
head
best
down.
decisions during that process either.
Well, and how many hours are you working a day trying to get all that done? I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Yeah, 12, 14-hour days
easy.
at
Yeah,
minimum.
easy. And maybe one day off if even. So,
Never, no.
yeah, just keep
Definitely
working.
not at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then the relocating, I'm doing a build out
Hmm.
on a new building, trying not to close at all during that process. And that was interesting.
So, um, was there any other, you had a little bit of government aid and you had some insurance. What about the community support? How did your community rebuild after all those tragedies?
For the community support, everybody was suffering. So there wasn't
Hmm.
a big outpouring of people helping people because
Hmm.
everybody had to help themselves.
Hmm.
There just wasn't enough time for anybody to help each other. I had help from another framer who decided to not reopen, relocate, retire, whatever it was. And so I needed new furniture. He was able to sell me his furniture at a great discount. A lot
Oh,
of his supplies and that kind of thing I was able to get from him. And then I had cross marketed with another framer and we helped each other if he didn't have a piece of equipment from his damage and I did. So we would work with each other. So that was
mhm.
really the only kind of support I had other than whatever friends weren't working or fixing their houses would come and help me, like empty
Yeah,
stuff or clean stuff.
yeah. They had enough to do. in my
Yeah.
situation with the earthquake, my shop was in a little kind of mini mall, and we just kind of, and my employees, the day after came in with their families and helped me put my store back together, which I will be
Nice.
eternally grateful to them for doing that. But then we kind of just moved as a group from shop to shop to shop, and we helped all the business owners in that little mall. We all helped each other get our stores
Oh,
built
that's
back up
nice.
because it's Christmas time. I had a toy store
Yeah.
right next to me. Oh my gosh, it's Christmas time for a toy store. That's our busiest time ever. And so, and so we got everybody built back up. But yeah, and it was really touching. And kind of had prior to that, wasn't an adversarial relationship, but I had one person in that mall who thought they were like the HOA president. And it's,
Oh,
you're not, you're not the boss of me. Stop telling me what I can and can't throw in the dumpster. I've got the rules. It's fine. And anyway, but we got a little closer after that. So it was kind of nice to have that community support and everybody helping everybody else out. But yeah, it's crazy. And so did you have any like unexpected challenges or what setbacks did you have during the rebuilding process? Just you said the financial setbacks, we had the oil spill. Was there anything else that fate decided to throw your way during that time?
not particularly. On the challenge was getting supplies because so many companies don't want to ship somewhere that's not your business. So once they were able to start, so really, honestly, because AMPF was devastated by the storm, and that was our
Oh, right.
local, the biggest
Yeah.
local. We have a warehouse here. Well, that warehouse flooded. That was a
Hmm.
big mess. And so Larson Jewel was then one of the ones that we were able to be filled with, but then they didn't want to deliver to my house. So again, they would work with me. They'd get approval. Okay, we'll go ahead and deliver this to your house, or we'll deliver to that frame shop who has somebody there. So
Hmm.
that was the challenge, was just getting the supplies in.
Right.
Kind of like being on an island when you're first getting back from the recovery.
Yeah. Did any of the vendors reach out or offer to help you after Katrina to help you kind of get back on your feet?
Not that I recall,
Not
no.
really. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Huh. Interesting. Come on, vendors. You need to help a little bit more.
And I mean, what could they have done but agreed to send the stuff to my house, knowing
Right.
what happened? But again, that had to get specific approval from the sales
Yeah.
rep for one particular job that I have in mind that I
Yeah.
had to get to the house because that's where I had the space to do it.
Yeah.
So that was
And
the
it probably
challenge.
depends on the size of the company too. But I
Mm-hmm.
know when I worked for Frame Ready a couple of years ago when Maui got devastated with all the fire, I I contacted all of our framers on the island and I was like, you know what? We're going to give you a 6 month credit on your subscription. You don't have to pay. So, and my boss was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. So, sometimes I think you just need to ask, but I guess it just depends on the company. But
Mm-hmm.
really, I don't think I don't think it would hurt to ask and say, hey, we just had a major disaster here. Give me a discount,
Right.
please.
And I guess I didn't think about that
Yeah.
because maybe they didn't charge shipping to the house instead of the shop. I mean, I don't even
Hmm.
remember because I was too busy asking for forbearance for the mortgage and
Right.
extensions for the credit cards. And so I was
Right.
more focused on the things that I knew I had to pay. My vendors I was net 30
Hmm.
on, so that worked out okay. But I
Yeah.
cannot recall. We're talking 20 years now.
Right. Right. So did the bank were they being understanding for folks or were they being jerks about it or you were
They
able
were
to get a
pretty
little bit of help?
understanding. Yeah, they
Okay.
worked with us. I think I went, maybe I was able to go 3 months forbearance on the mortgage,
Hmm.
maybe six. I'm not real sure how many months they gave
Yeah,
us, but I think credit cards gave us 6 months to pay.
that's good.
People were, it took some calls and talking and a lot of time in the library computer
Hmm.
trying to set that up because that's all new to figuring
Yeah,
out, oh, we can do that. Oh, we just have to ask for that.
right. And how do you know until you have a disaster? I mean, it's not something you think
Exactly.
about every day. So looking back and you're a little man, you're amazing. You're a superhero, Jennifer, that you got through all that. What do you think were some of the more important lessons that you learned about business, continuity, disaster preparedness. If you could go back and send a message to your 2005 self, what would you tell that person? What or yourself, what would you say? Hey, do this.
Well, I am telling myself this today because as I'm realizing the things I did learn, I am not fully prepared for this hurricane season.
Mhm,
So Ida was in 2021, I
mhm,
believe. So it was just a few years ago. And we did have damage. I was closed for about 2 weeks for Ida. I had a
mhm,
big, I don't know, a patio cover in my driveway on top of a vehicle. We had
mhm,
quite a bit of damage. So I wasn't
mhm,
terribly prepared for that, but I also stayed for that storm. So I was
mhm,
here. I could get in quick. I could assess all the damage, access to paperwork. Um, but the thing I would tell myself today, prepare ahead of time. I need to have paper with all of my
mhm,
policies in front of me
mhm.
because computers, maybe I have it, maybe I don't have internet access, maybe I can't access it, can't find my passwords. It's about being organized, have your
Right.
passwords and everything. Know your coverages. I'm dealing with my new liability insurance
Mhm,
right now. I need to know my coverages. I need to make sure that I have access to everything because I
mhm.
was fumbling. I'm on this computer library where none of my passwords were saved. I didn't library computer. Now I'm
Mhm.
confusing myself. And also applying ahead of time for the reentry parish placards. I wouldn't have
Mm.
thought of that. I have to go do that. You have to register with the parish so you can already have it printed with the name of the people that are on it for the business who can come back in.
Oh, wow.
And that
Yeah.
way you're not struggling to get that because they don't let just anybody in. And in
Right.
Gretna, we are an incorporated city. So we have our own police department and they lock down. So now
Oh,
I
wow.
register with the Gretna police and they give me a little placard to put on my window and they will specifically check certain businesses to make sure people aren't breaking in and looting.
Oh, that's
And
good.
so I
Yeah.
register with them knowing ahead of a disaster. And so they
Hmm.
will do their rounds and check as well. So just having all of your ducks in a row. And it's insurance is just really the thing you have to focus on. You have to revise it every year. You have to
Hmm.
be well versed because here, with the expense that it has gotten to, you have to have your minimum coverage you can afford or the maximum coverage you can afford, but you do have to minimize it, know where to shift it, and also know the terminology because wind and hail is a different policy that you have to carry for hurricanes.
Right.
I
Right.
had a tornado come through at one of my last locations and it ripped up the street. I got some water damage, and they said it's not wind and hail. It is wind driven rain because I didn't have roof damage. So I got zero coverage at all.
Oh,
So
gosh. Yeah.
knowing those terms helps to
Hmm.
fight your case also, but getting the right coverage, making sure that you max out that wind and hail as opposed to maybe this arc coverage.
Right.
So this year, the change I made was I have discontinued consignment art. It's entirely too much of an expense to insure. So if
Hmm.
I've got an extra 20,000 in consignment art, I'm only making 35% on or 30% whatever consignment I'm charging, but yet I'm putting out this huge expense for coverage.
Right.
And I'm done with that.
It's
I'm
not,
done.
not
I'm
worth it.
not selling art right now. I just got rid of all of it because I
Hmm.
struggle. Oh, there's evacuation. You got to come pick up your art. You got to come pick up your art. Nobody would
Right.
ever come pick it up. There were some lost pieces in Katrina. I,
Hmm.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So those are the changes I've had to make just to secure my own sanity at the time of a hurricane.
Hmm. So yeah, so planning is important, and
Mm-hmm.
it's something we kind of put off. We're like, do it later, whatever. But I think both of us realize it's like, yeah, you think it's not going to
Yeah,
happen to you. It can happen to you more than once
absolutely.
in your case.
Even if we
So,
have a storm in the Gulf and I don't, if I give myself 3 days, if it's 3 days out and they say it's coming here, I start pulling the most valuable artwork off the walls. I pile
mm,
everything on tables. I've got my plastic labeled now because I will
mm.
throw plastic over every single table. I
Oh
tape
wow.
it down. I put things under tables. I tape it down. I lift everything off the floor. pile it on tables. So I stop work. I lose about a week to week and a half anytime we have a possible storm risk headed here.
Hmm.
Because if I
But
have to go, I have to pick up and go. And it takes me a good 2 days to secure everything so that I don't have the risk of damage. Because I'd rather not have a claim and have a roof ripped off and have everything covered in
mhm.
plastic, have nothing ruined. Wouldn't that be fabulous? So I go
Right.
over, I'll even hang trash bags on the walls if I feel like it's necessary. I'm 5 blocks from the
Mhm.
river. If the river overflows, I'm going to flood. So I make sure everything's at least 3 foot off the ground.
Just in a frame
Well, I
shop.
store things
Houseboat.
under the table. Like
Yeah.
I have 2 foot off the ground and 18 inches off the ground. I have artwork under that table. I don't leave that. I pull everything out and put it on top of
Mhm.
tables as high as I can possibly go.
Right.
And then sandbag the front door and put a secure. I do everything I possibly can.
Yeah. And have all this, have all the things. It's always, gosh, you
Yeah,
can't, you really can't over prepare, but then again, you can't have 55 sandbags stacked up against outside your shop every single day either.
right.
It's kind of hard to find that balance.
And we're kind of in a tornado alley here now, a southern
Hmm.
tornado alley. And in 2011, when that tornado had passed through, I actually had just relocated again. This is
Hmm.
my fourth location. And after my initial location post Katrina, I had spent 3 years at this new place. I
Hmm.
moved a week early. I had friends that were helping. They moved everything, helped me move, got it all into the new place. And then 2 days later, the storm passes through. An April storm, tornado runs down the street, devastates the street. I had that little bit of water, not much
Hmm.
damage. I go to my old location. The entire roof had been ripped back. Everything was wet.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
That's a God interference to me because I would have
Yeah.
lost everything a second time had
Right.
I not done this the week before. I'm always
Hmm.
being watched out for. I've done the right things in life, apparently, but so I had
Yeah.
to near
Her-
almost lose everything a second time, and so
Oh yeah.
I'm just very careful with water. Water is not my friend.
It's not for any framer. Yeah, water is
Water scares me
devastating.
more than fire, honestly.
In your insurance coverage, did you have like work or business stoppage insurance where they still pay you even though you have to have your doors closed while you're remodeling?
I think I had minimum. I did
Okay.
have a little bit. I don't know how much they paid out. I actually just spoke to my agent about that. They said max
Hmm.
payout is 6 months. So I was
Hmm.
overinsured for that. I was paying a lot
Hmm.
of excess because I had given them my annual revenue from a few
Hmm.
years prior, which it's not
Hmm.
only gone down, but they're only going to pay half anyway. But they don't
Hmm.
tell you you're overcovered there. So it's ask
Yeah.
those questions about what business interruption insurance will cover.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think finding a good insurance agent is probably key to
Oh,
surviving a business disaster, right?
yeah.
And one that's ethical
Yeah.
and yeah,
And it's
and
hard. It's hard. Like I'm just stuck with the company I have because
mm,
nobody writes insurance to us. I mean, it's
mm,
gotten really, really expensive and you have
hmm,
to have it. I was priced out of my house. Now I rent my house out to somebody because I couldn't
yeah,
afford the payment because of the amount of insurance that they wanted to have.
yeah. A lot of states in the
Yeah.
Gulf are facing that. Like I know in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
they you can't even get housing insurance.
We're lucky to have
Yeah.
the insurance. So when you have it, you don't risk losing that company because
Hmm.
you may never get it again.
Right. Yeah. So, what do you think if what advice would you give to other small frame shops who might face a catastrophe if you could say, "Hey, here's some advice. This is what I think you should do." What would you tell them?
Ask the questions.
Mm,
We're always afraid to ask the
yeah.
questions. Today we have so much technology. I use ChatGPT to give me the answers.
Hmm.
I tell ChatGPT, you are an insurance agent. This is the kind of insurance you
Hmm.
write. And I ask questions because even my insurance agent, since my renewal just came up on the 6th of June, I still don't have coverage because they couldn't answer my questions.
Hmm.
I'm not paying for a policy that I am not familiar with, that you can't
Right.
even tell me what it is because they made changes. They switched from this to this. Well, you can't answer my questions.
Mhm.
So you need to get it straight.
Yeah.
Ask questions because and the agent told me this. Well, some people, they'll just pay whatever to make sure they're covered.
Mhm.
Well,
But
I can't afford to do that because I am a
right.
small business. So then I started asking questions. And even though she sold the insurance, she couldn't answer the questions. So you
Mhm.
have to ask above them. Okay, well, who can answer my questions? Who can I go
Mhm.
to get these answered? I refuse to sign this policy until you can answer my questions. And I probably would have wasted $1,000 this year if I hadn't have asked those questions. At least I'm hoping. I'm still waiting for my quote. I think it's sitting in
Mhm.
my inbox right now.
So yeah, don't just blindly sign an insurance policy and trust your insurance agent to say, "Oh yeah, you're covered, you're fine."
Or don't
Um,
assume I'll never need
mhm,
to get a full payout. Why
mhm,
would I need to have this? And
right.
I'm going to call myself out. Right now, I am
Mhm,
underinsured for my business personal property because of the expense of it.
right.
And
Oh,
I know
sure.
if I had a full disaster and I lost everything, okay, this is all I'll get paid out. But I know from experience, I'll be able to build it back up because, again, everybody's going to need
Hmm.
replacement of all their framing. There's less
Yep.
frame shops now than there were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm counting on experience to support me. I hope to never lose everything again. I hope to never use a full payout of business
Okay.
personal property again.
Yeah.
But I'm still here in New Orleans, so
There
I
you
might.
go. What are you gonna do, right?
Yeah.
I think one thing I would tell people to do, just from my experience, is number one, get a POS framing system
Mm-hmm.
and back up your data. Back it up. Make sure that all your sales are saved. And if you do that, because you're going to need those numbers for insurance, you're going to need to show them these are what my sales are. These are the customer orders I had in the shop that got lost or destroyed or damaged or whatever. But back up your data, back it up, and keep it off site. So
Yes.
what I would do, I had my computers up in my shop and I go ahead and back it up to the computer. But once a week, every Saturday when I closed out for my sales, I just take a little thumb drive, stick it in there. I had it on my keychain, but I would go ahead and back up my data to that thumb drive and then keep it off site. So if your store gets burns down, you've got a copy.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you back up to the cloud, perfect too, then you can access it
Yeah.
from anywhere.
So
But
I
back up,
haven't quite done the off-site thing, but that was
yeah,
part of my what would I recommend for future
yeah.
people is back up. But I am now on cell service only. I don't do a landline so that when I
Mm-hmm,
have my business away, I have my phone with me. I
hmm.
switch to laptop and iPad,
Yeah.
which I should be cloud, but cloud storage doesn't hold everything right
Hmm.
now for
Right.
me. But I've
Yeah.
got an external hard drive, I've got flash drives, and I've got a laptop. All of
Hmm.
it comes when I leave. I have
Yeah.
one desktop left, and that's connected to the external hard drive, which backs up every day that I can then take with me when I leave. I
Right.
don't take it off site because I live next door. So
Yeah.
if
There
it
you go.
burns down, I'm running in here and I'm going to take my hard
Yeah,
drives.
we're gonna save it. Take the hard drive, grab
I
it.
know that
But
frames don't burn quickly, so I get that for
yeah,
solace to know I'll
yeah,
make
we're
it
good.
in and out.
We're good. But yeah, that data, that's the difference
Mm-hmm.
between getting paid and not getting paid,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's super, super, super important. And you don't realize it until you can't access it. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're
Well,
you're
now I
really
would like to be all digital. I'm not. I'm still very
hmm.
manual, but I do recommend if you can be digital.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
even with the oil spill, I had to go back
Hmm.
however many years they required. 2010, but I could only go back to 2006 because that's all the paperwork I had post
Hmm.
Katrina. So I had to scan every single monthly envelope for every year from 2006 to 2010 in to
Yikes.
BP for my claim. I had
Hmm.
to do it twice because they lost the first one. So
Oh my gosh.
digitizing is so important.
Yeah.
I don't do it, but I recommend it
Hmm. It's
for
one of those
even
things.
those simple things.
It's on your to-do list, but yeah, usually, and you need it for 7 years, so
Right.
back it up. And even if you have it for 5 years, especially with insurance, they can average out those sales. But yeah, I found that out too. It's like, oh, you're gonna need all my sales to give me some insurance money. So
Right, to know exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, even for business interruption insurance, you're going to have to be able
hmm,
to produce that. Yeah.
right. You got to prove it. So
Hmm.
what? So I want you to tell me your superhero ways. How did you how did you stay resilient and how did you get through all those crises? You know, I know you had to dig deep to get through that.
Mhm.
How did you do it, girl?
I mean, I drank a lot during some of the processes. I mean, it happened.
Wine
Um,
helps. Okay, that's cool.
it
Xanax,
does help.
totally recommend. 5 stars. Would do it again. So yeah.
Sometimes, yes, therapy for sure. But
Hmm.
knowing that everybody else was going through it at the same time, it helps. Because even though somebody's in a different kind of business, you can call them up and say, I don't know if I can do this. And then they're rallying. You can do it. Come on. I'm doing
Hmm.
it too. We're going to do it at the
Yeah.
same time. And it's just, I, my biggest motivation now through any other disaster future and pretty much since 2010 was I don't want to go back to retail management.
Hmm.
When I faced that on closing my previous business and opening the new one, I was a window of 4 months there where I wasn't working, or 3 months. What should I do? I don't want to do that. I don't want to go work for anybody else. And if I do, I'll probably get fired because I can't get to work on time. So I just have to make this work. I have to make this
Hmm.
work. And I did it with my own family saying, just give it up. Just go get a job. Just give
Hmm.
it up. Go get a job. My own sister, I was in
Hmm.
business with, my mom, just give it up. Go get a job. I don't
Hmm.
want to. So I downsized, I scaled down, and I just did what I had to do, not eating out, not doing whatever I wanted to do. I just did what I had to do to make it work. Resiliency comes with disaster and it strengthens with every disaster, I find out. And you just do it to survive, to live the life that you want to live, which I
Yeah.
wanted to be self employed still.
Yeah, it's and you just don't have a choice. You have to.
Yeah.
And I think I was surprised at how brave and tenacious and tough I could be. I
Yeah.
always thought
You
I was
surprise
gonna,
yourself in that
yeah, I'm
situation.
like,
Absolutely.
okay, I got to do this. It's kind of like a mama bear type instinctive thing where you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
nope. And at the time I was a single parent. I had adopted my sister had passed away and I adopted her son. And I was trying to take care of him and run a business and all the things. And wow. I mean, I can't even really remember it.
Yeah.
I know that I did it and I know that I put food on the table, it was all okay. I think I was just in shock, but going through it, I don't even know who that was, like a robot puppet or whatever, but
Yeah, and that's kind of what it is. You do it naturally,
hmm.
instinctively. I listen to my intuition because 2006 to 2010, that little window from one disaster to the other, my ex-husband was going into rehab. He was an
Oh
addict that I
gosh.
dealt with for many years,
Yeah.
having to deal with him traveling back and forth. So this is about 2007. I'm having to go back and forth to the rehab, work 80 hours a week, do everything, take care of the
Hmm.
household.
Oh yeah.
And then in 2010, right after the whole disaster there with BP, I got divorced. So, like, I
Oh
had
gosh.
the personal stuff all behind the business disasters. So, I was just like the mechanical little, I guess I was a
Hmm.
mechanical superhero. I just didn't give
Hmm.
myself a moment of
You're like Iron Man, except a
peace.
girl.
Right.
There you
And
go.
since 2006, I haven't once been organized. Katrina took organization away from me. And I
It's
am that
working.
organized person. I'm a Virgo. I
Yeah.
love organized, wonderful spaces. I just have never been able to regain that. So that's my most stressful post disaster is just the lack of organization.
Mhm. And it is, and I think part of it too, when I closed my frame shop in 2020 after COVID, and it was so painful doing that. I couldn't even revisit framing. I couldn't even look at it on social media. Just was so heartbreaking to me. And yeah, and so kind of
Mm-hmm.
going through all that, I've got a storage unit right now with stuff in it from the shop. I had to
Oh
keep the
gosh.
records and everything. and I'm getting psyched up to go. It's about 300 miles away in the other city that I was
Oh
in,
my gosh.
but I'm trying to get psyched up to just be able to go through that storage. And I've just come back. It's easier for me just to throw $100 a month at that and not have to think about it because I just don't, I wasn't in a good place to go through it. I'm not sure if I
Yeah.
still am. Um, and my sister who passed away, a lot of her stuff is in there because it was during
Oh
COVID. I
yeah.
couldn't donate it. Her son, my adopted kid, went into the military, so I didn't want to throw all that away because he might want that later.
Hmm.
So he's only 18. He's like, "Oh, I don't know if I need that." I'm like, you might want this later.
Yeah.
If you don't, that's okay, but we'll go through it. So yeah, it's a lot to have to just revisit that. Is just so painful and it brings up all the trauma. And I think you had mentioned therapy for me as well. Therapy has helped a lot to kind of
Hmm.
process some of that.
Yeah.
Because I think we kind of compartmentalize those feelings a little bit. I know that's what I
Absolutely.
did in 2020. I'm just like, me, I'm not going to deal with all that grief stuff or
Yeah.
whatever because I got a kids to raise, I got a business to run.
Hmm.
We'll think about that tomorrow. And, then 5 or 6 years of tomorrows and I'm not doing well and not
I
thriving. I'm like,
know.
maybe it's time to start processing some of those feelings. And it's been really helpful. So
The
I
time
appreciate,
passes so fast too. Yeah.
mhm. But I appreciate you being open and candid about that because sometimes among small business owners, especially, or we feel like we have to project this image of being superwoman and
Hmm.
we really don't. And there's no stigma to asking for help and
Hmm.
seeing a therapist, absolutely. Or seeking out help from a business consultant. We do that too. We're kind of a therapist, but for your business. So
Where the
there's,
storage sheds do work temporarily. I've had
yeah.
multiple times storage shed. That's why when people say, "How many times have you moved?" I will say I've had 4 locations, but I've moved
Mhm.
6 times
Yeah.
because I had to move into, maybe eight, 'cause moved into storage shed post Katrina, out when they fixed it.
Hmm.
Between the bankruptcy and reopening, again, I used storage for everything until I built out and reopened. So yeah, storage centers tend to work as well.
Yeah.
Plus, you
Hey,
set it aside so you can deal with it in your own
yes.
time.
And sometimes just it's just I'm throwing money at the problem because I just don't want to deal with it right now. And
Right.
I will. That's my goal before the end of the summer. I'm gonna go down and clean her out and, face all those difficult memories and difficult things. But you know what? You got to do it. I got to
Well,
be
that's
an
what helps
adult.
you process. That's what helps
Hmm.
you move on and be the person that you are. That's what made me the person I am today because I sat and
Right.
cried every single time it made me sad. I let it
Hmm.
out.
Hmm.
You know, when I see a storm get in the Gulf, sometimes I
Hmm.
panic and cry, and then I'm like, shut up and get to work.
Right. And we had talked about this a little bit earlier prior to, the podcast is that yeah, I still, I'm back up in Alaska right now hanging out with my mom and we had we have little earthquakes all the time. I grew up here. We have earthquakes every week and volcanoes erupting and all the things, but now I still have so much unprocessed trauma from that earthquake. When we get an earthquake, I have a panic attack. I shut down. Like, "Oh, there's an earthquake again. It's happening." But yeah, so I need more psychotropic drugs and more therapy to deal with all that. But yeah, you don't realize it is trauma when you go through that. And I
Absolutely. And people ask me, well, why do you keep staying there? Why do you stay open? Why do you risk another hurricane? Because I don't want to go through earthquakes or
yeah,
volcanoes
right.
because those I can't run from.
You
The
can't.
tornadoes, I lived in Kansas. You can't run from
Mhm.
tornadoes. I have
Yeah,
those here, but not like there. So, like,
yeah,
this is the natural disaster of my choice.
yeah. At least you can kind of prepare for it. It's horrible, but at least you got a little bit of warning, or you can at least leave. And that was,
Right.
I think, what I learned too. The first thing that went through my head when that earthquake happened, and everything in my kitchen. I was at home, and it was about 8:30. I was going to head into my office or into the store at 9. We opened at 10. I usually got there about an hour ahead of time, and I was literally sitting on my bed putting on my pants and so it caught me with my pants down. And the house started shaking. My dog started freaking out. I was like, oh, it's just an earthquake. But this was different. It sounded like a freight train coming right to my house. And I live, 3 miles away from the nearest uh train track, and everything shook. And thank goodness I was next to my bed because that's about the safest place you can be. And I just knelt down beside the bed and covered my head with
Mm.
pillows and grabbed my dog, and it lasted for a long, long time. But everything in my kitchen, everything was on the floor. All the cabinets opened up, the refrigerator opened up,
Mm.
everything was on the floor, and everything that wasn't plastic was broken. I mean, and yeah, but my first thought after that was, how's my kid?
Yeah.
How's my boy doing?
Right.
And so, thank goodness the phone still worked. I was texting him. He was in school. His school is actually an earthquake shelter. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Like, okay, sweetheart. That's all that matters. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else, we'll deal with it. But my kid's okay. My dog's okay. I'm okay. The house isn't exploded, or
Yeah.
we had a couple little cracks and some problems with our septic tank later, but other than that, it was easy peasy. Those things are fixable,
Yeah.
you know.
And see that's a totally different kind of trauma. I mean,
Mhm,
that's one little shake, you're feeling it. So I definitely can sympathize with the way you feel, but mine on
mhm,
a lesser level because it's not, you get warning.
mhm, yeah.
Hmm.
You can stock up on the alcohol.
Right.
Say
That's the
like,
one.
might
Anybody
need
in a
this later.
hurricane area, the personal prep that I recommend is stock up on alcohol and bring your food with you if you leave because
Right.
we had some nasty there were
Oh yeah,
refrigerators
yeah.
on the roadside, duct
Mm,
tape shut. You knew do not
yeah,
open it
yeah.
because there was all kinds of bad stuff in the
Oh
refrigerators.
yeah.
We thought about that when we left because we had just
Mhm.
been to Sam's. We had
Of
pork
course. Yeah.
tenderloin or beef
Mhm.
tenderloin. We had shrimp from the bayou.
Yeah.
We had it all frozen. I'm like, I'm not leaving that. I'm bringing. We
Right.
ate
Well, save
well.
money. Yeah, right. Yeah, have some empty ice chests around so you can
Yeah.
pack all that stuff up and take it with you. And water too. You don't realize
Yes,
one of my
water.
friends was in North Carolina, and they're kind of in a rural area, and they were okay. Their house was fine. And he is like a prepper, he has all the
Oh
things
yeah.
and MREs and stuff. But the one thing they didn't think about was water. And they had a swimming pool, so they could use that for, bathing and stuff. And they just had a little baby. So of course, oh my gosh, how much laundry and um water you need when you have a baby to give them baths and stuff like that. But they didn't want to give them a bath in the chlorinated pool water, so just baby wipes and kind of doing a sponge bath as best you can. But drinking water, he's like, yeah, we kind of forgot about all the drinking water we probably need. And
Yeah.
and to go get that, we we
You
just didn't
can't.
have access. And the roads were all closed. They were flooded out, but it's like this crazy, you know, like a fire hydrant that opened. It's not like you can go there with a cup and grab water out of the stream. So yeah, that was the one thing that he said. He was like, yeah, we're stocking up. We're getting, two couple 100-gallon water tanks and just keeping those in the garage because
Yeah.
water.
That is very necessary because I actually did research
Hmm.
recently because I have reverse osmosis systems.
Hmm.
I like to drink clean water because the river water is not clean.
Hmm. Oh
So
no.
I did research, and even the reverse osmosis, if we have boil water advisories, you can't, it's not going to clean the water the way you think it needs to be clean. So
Hmm.
not only stock up on water, but I got those filtration straws too.
Hmm.
You're going to run out of water if you're out of power
Yep.
for 2 to 3 weeks.
Carbon filters and cheesecloth
Mm-hmm.
because you're
Yeah.
going to need to strain the goobies out of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and the water doesn't taste good when you boil it.
Yeah.
And you need to boil it for about, 15, 20 minutes to kill all the creatures in there.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you want an amoeba or giardia. And yeah, and it
Yeah.
just tastes really flat and kind of metallic-y. It doesn't taste does not taste good. So you might want to have some Kool-Aid or something to put in there just to make it, potable so that you can even drink it because boiled water does
Absolutely.
not taste, it is not delicious.
No.
So I think we've covered up almost everything. I would just say for the last to kind of wrap things up, what do you have like what message of like hope and perseverance? And we touched on it a little bit, but what if you were talking to a framer who'd just been through a disaster, what would you tell her today?
You can do it. If you want to keep
Mhm.
doing this, you will find what it takes to do it. You'll find the resilience to do it.
Mhm.
And I'll help you through whatever part I can, because I would love to be a help to people.
Sure.
I have the flexibility to be able to shut down or work by appointment and go and help people that might need help.
Mhm.
Just offer whatever I can offer, whether it's moral support, whether it's advice of how to do it, but just knowing if I can do it, you can do it. I
Yeah.
did it with sciatica. I could barely walk at the time. I've had to have
Mhm.
spinal decompression since then. So I was broken at the time, but I found a way to do it.
Mhm.
Medication at the time was in effect, and sometimes you need to be on medication to help
Mhm.
you do it. Reach out to any resources you can. If
Right.
you need medication, reach out to doctors for either psychiatric medication or pain medication, whatever
Mhm.
you need to get you through this window of time. Nothing in life is permanent. It's all going to pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would say don't ignore self-care
Yeah.
because as women, as mothers, as wives, um, we often do that. We give to everybody. And as employers and business people, we're giving to our employees, we're giving to our customers all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when that cup is empty, to fill it takes so long. I mean, you're just done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes to where you get so overwhelmed. There's fight and flight, but there's also freeze,
Mm-hmm.
and you just freeze. You can't even think about what am I going to do now? I'm going to be so unproductive. So investing in that self-care, taking a day off, taking an afternoon off.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to close your shop's not going to burst into flames if you close it for a
Right.
few hours in the day to go get a pedicure because you deserve it, gosh darn it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I advise people to do too is schedule that self-care into your
You have to
calendar
schedule it. You have to
and make
schedule
it
it because it won't
right.
happen if you
It
don't.
won't. And if you say, oh, yeah, I'll go do something for myself later. I'll go
Mm-hmm.
have coffee with my girlfriends or go get a margarita or whatever. Yeah, if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. It just won't. And once you schedule it, it is a sacred
Yeah.
commitment in your calendar, and you don't change it for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That is my time,
Yeah.
and I'm doing it. And even the act of just doing a silly thing like getting a manicure. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I need one now, but it doesn't take that much time, and it doesn't cost that much money, but just the act of doing it is kind of like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I deserve this and I deserve to have pretty fingers. If nobody else gets to see them, at least I do.
Right.
And it makes me feel nice and girly. And I love doing that. Or, reading a book or talking to
Or
a friend
just
on the phone.
doing nothing.
Yeah,
Sometimes that's
absolutely.
all I have time to do is to just
Hmm.
doom scroll for an hour. I just
Yeah.
want to lay down, do nothing for an hour because I'm always doing, doing, doing. I don't often take self care time, but that self care time is
Mhm.
shutting off and just doing nothing for an
Yeah.
hour. And during recovery of disasters, it don't be hard on yourself if you don't make time because you have to do what has to be done.
Right.
Then you can schedule your self care, but you have to recover from that.
You can schedule your nervous breakdown later, but schedule it.
Right.
And I think you said something a little bit too that I thought was profound. And I had a similar experience too, like when going through grief and loss, and whether that's a personal, and I know you just had some loss in your family, and I'm so sorry for that. I don't mean to bring it up to make you feel sad, but when you're going through grief and loss, I had grief for the loss of my business. When your kids leave home, you kind of go through a grief process. And it's important not to push that down. It's important to feel it. And so what I did, this is what worked for me. Not saying it's going to work for everybody, but when I and you can't plan when grief is going to hit you. It just hits you like a rogue wave, and it's like I had like a meltdown at the natural gas company. I went there to go pay my gas bill, and I had a meltdown because that was one of the last places I was with my sister before she died.
Oh,
And we had gone there and we went to go pay her gas bill. And we were laughing in line and being silly and being stupid and making silly jokes about gas, just being 12. And I walked in there just to pay a stupid bill and I had a meltdown. I just lost it. And so I'm in my car just sobbing in the parking lot of the stupid ass company. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Get it together, girl. But
Uh-huh.
I learned to just, okay, this is the feeling. I'm feeling this for
Mhm.
some reason now. Sometimes the waves are little, sometimes the waves are huge. And sometimes it's not like a bad thing. It's a nice memory that comes up, but it's a little
Yeah.
bit bittersweet. But I'm just like, okay, I take my phone and I actually set the timer on my phone. And I'm like, I am giving myself 20 minutes to feel this feeling right now. And I'm going to feel it. And it's not going to be
Full,
pleasant,
yep, feel it full on.
but I'm going to feel it. And I'm going to ugly cry.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to touch up my mascara again.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And if people see me, that's their problem, not mine.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna go have a nervous breakdown for a little while, and I'm gonna feel the grief, and I'm gonna cry about it, and I'm gonna be mad about it, and I'm gonna feel all the feels. But when that timer goes off, I'm done.
Yep. And you have to let
And
that happen. You have to
yeah,
feel the feelings. I
yeah,
have a friend who, early widow, she's my age and she became a widow at my age, I guess. She's a
mhm,
few years, it's been a few years. And she would ask me, I don't know how you do it because I've always been affected by addicts and alcoholics. So it's been
mhm,
my choice. So I've been affected in a different way. And so it's grief process going through that. But she'll ask me, how do you do it? And I'm like, how do you do it? I need to know how you do it. And she taught me, no matter what the situation, show up, just
yeah,
show up. She would go to the grocery store. She would get a basket full of groceries and then she would have a meltdown and she would just walk away. But
mhm,
she showed up. That's, I guess, what gets me through all of this is I just show up. If I decide that I can't do it at the moment, I did my best. I showed up. Now
okay,
I can go sit in the car and cry. And maybe
right,
I'll make it back to that basket. Maybe I won't.
right,
And I've had that instance where I'm in the bank for my mortgage and I'm crying in the office because I'm
mhm,
having a meltdown over the situation and apologize. I'm sorry I'm doing this in front of you, but
yeah. Just you're just gonna
show
have to
up and do
deal.
the best you can, right? But there's only so much that you can stuff and not feel through all the traumas in life. We all have traumas. We all have shit that happens. You just have to let it be felt.
Right. And I think going through those things has made me a lot more compassionate and
Mm-hmm.
forgiving of other people
Mm-hmm.
because when people are angry, you have people, angry customers come in and, they're being jerks or whatever, being entitled. But a very wise woman told me one time that anger comes from pain.
Mm-hmm.
And
And you don't know
so,
what anybody else is going through.
no. And I think about, I don't want to be a hypocrite and say I hate the word Karen because all
Yeah.
the Karens I know are lovely. But, there are times when I probably overreacted in a situation. Absolutely. I try not to do it very often, but have I? Yeah. One time I remember it was about my storage unit. And they're supposed to meet me there. There was a problem with the lock on the gate or whatever. They're supposed to meet me there. Nobody showed up. I was on a deadline. I'm trying to go through this, and I'm dreading going through the storage unit because that's where all my deceased sister's stuff is. And the girl on the other end of the line, she was trying her best, but she just wasn't. She was kind of like, whatever, like you were supposed to be here at 10 o'clock. It's 10:30. I've been waiting for half an hour. Where are you? And I was maybe a little more rude than I would have liked to have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I hung up the phone and waited for a few minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this? I'm That's not me. I'm not like that. I've become the customer I never want to have. Oh my gosh. And so I called
Yeah.
back and I was like, okay, first of all, I am so sorry. Uh, and I explained to her the situation. She's like, oh no, it's okay. I sent the flowers. I was just like, oh, bad, bad, bad. Don't be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But forgive yourself too and be like, okay, if you're going through something, it's okay. Now you know not to do that. But I think sometimes too, when you're suffering, with depression and anxiety, if you can just get up in the morning and take a shower, hey, good
Mm-hmm.
for you. You
Right.
got,
You did something for the day.
yeah. And action, I think that helps us doing things or checking off a couple things on your to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that makes you feel empowered. It's like, okay, I'm moving forward. I'm making progress because when you're depressed, you're just stuck. You're just
Mm-hmm.
it's literally you're
And the
damned.
constant procrastination makes you more depressed because now you're
Oh
not
yeah,
getting anything done. You're just procrastinating everything.
right. And then you feel
Mm-hmm.
guilty and then you feel
Yeah.
overwhelmed and then you're frozen and yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't even move or make a decision and you don't want to get
Mm-hmm.
out of bed. So, it's so therapy, wine helps,
Yeah.
uh, drugs can help, prescribed drugs, of course. Although, I'm in Vegas, so gummies and things like
Yeah.
that are legal, but I myself do not partake in the devil's lettuce, but if that works for you, that's great. And I find too, going back to the self-care, meditation,
Yeah.
being mindful of just taking a little time, even if it's 15 or 20 minutes in the day. I usually get up early before everybody else because I got a dog and I normally have to go pee first thing in the morning because I'm old now. And I'll just sit outside, drink some tea, listen to something inspirational, and just watch the sun come up, which here in Alaska, it's up at like, 2 o'clock in the morning, the sun comes up
Yeah.
because we got 24-hour daylight right now. But in Las Vegas, where my other home is, and I just get up and watch the sunrise. And that's kind of a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
thing for me. But do what works
Yeah.
for you, whatever brings you peace, and it could be anything, playing with your dog or looking at videos of baby goats on YouTube. That
Yeah.
brings me peace. That brings me
And
happiness.
utilize friendships too. That's
Oh, for
important.
sure.
Having your close friend. I'm somebody who has very close friends.
Hmm.
They don't do this business, but they understand I just need to be heard.
Hmm.
And so if you have friends that just want that way, if you're not comfortable talking to a therapist or something
Hmm.
like that,
Sure.
you've got your friends. Friends are therapists too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they know you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they have an advantage over the therapist that, I've got some long-term friends here that I've had since like kindergarten, and which is
Right.
unusual, but we've been through everything together. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's great. And I think I love the group Women in Picture Framing. I love that support that we get in that
Mm-hmm.
forum because we get it. And
Yeah.
I think too, as women, when we are support each other and bind, whatever, gather together, group together,
Mm-hmm.
we're unstoppable.
I
We
agree.
can do anything when we're backbiting and being mean girls. That
I
doesn't help
know.
anything. But
Mm-mm.
when we actually unite together and work, I mean, women have accomplished amazing things in our world. Pretty much all the good
Mm-hmm.
social changes and justice and all the good things were done by women. And the
Yeah.
ideas were women. And when women bounded together, to get the vote, civil
That's why I love
rights.
that women's page so much
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
questions because we don't think the same as men.
Mm-mm.
And we can be mansplained on
For
these other
sure.
pages. They're
For
not
sure.
understanding where we're coming from on the questions, whereas
Hmm.
on the female run page, much more um,
Right.
forgiving on our questions.
Right. Well, they don't make you feel stupid. And we love the men. And I've gotten amazing
Yes.
advice from men on other framing
Yes.
pages too that I'm eternally grateful for.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, but we do think a little differently. And
Right.
so it
Well,
does
if
help
we're
to
in
have.
that difficult part, like if I need questions about, sorry, if I have questions about disaster, whatever the questions
Mhm.
are, I need them to understand and not talk down to me. And I need,
Mhm.
they're
Right.
not as feeling, so they might have some good input
Hmm.
technically, but emotionally, yeah, there's
Right.
some pages better for that.
And I absolutely agree with that. In my practice of consulting, I'm trying to be a little different than just your average business consultant because I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to have more of a holistic approach. Because
Mm-hmm.
businesses, it's not just, spreadsheets and knowing your numbers and knowing your business and all those things, absolutely super duper duper important. And they are key to being successful. But we all know there's another side to owning a business too, and that's the personal side, the time commitment, the sacrifices, the financial struggles that we have. And it absolutely affects your relationships. It affects your marriage. It
Mm-hmm.
affects everything. If you get sick, what are you going to do? you know, if you're a one woman show like many of us are, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to close my shop for a month while I go have, cancer surgery or whatever. So
Hmm.
I want to focus on the whole person and be like, hey, it's good to get your business in order too, but also make sure you take good care of yourself, take care of your relationships,
Hmm.
and hopefully I can give some people some skills and ideas on doing those things. Because it's like
Hmm.
I feel like it's having a brand new baby when you own a business and it's an infant all the time. It's
Yeah.
way more expensive, first of all, but it's you wake up in the middle of the night and like, okay, is the baby still breathing? Is he still breathing? Okay, phew, still alive. All right, I'm a good mom. Whew, didn't kill the baby. Aha, that was my one. I had one job and I did it. Baby's alive. And but you do the same thing with your business. All of us,
Hmm.
I think when we own a business, we wake up in the middle of the night. We're like, oh no,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
what am I gonna do? So yeah.
Absolutely.
Jennifer, I can't even tell you how much I appreciate you talking with me today. You sent me some pictures. I'm going to try and edit that and we'll put those in the podcast today. But thank you so much for joining us. I
Thank you for
think this will
having
be
me.
really helpful for framers all over the world to watch and be prepared for disasters. It can happen to you and it happens to a
Yeah.
lot of people every year. And I don't like to live in fear, but you got to be smart and be
Right. You have to
pragmatic
be prepared. Yeah.
about things, just like anything. And yeah, you don't realize how ill prepared you are until you actually go through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hopefully this helps everybody out.
It does help. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. If you are in the Louisiana area, I'll put a link to Jennifer's shop in the comments so you can go see her website. Jennifer's a CPF. She does amazing work on her
Thank
website.
you.
She has pictures of all the really, really cool stuff that she's framed. And you framed some cool stuff because you've got kind of that music background there too. So I saw like a half a guitar that you framed and some other stuff
Oh,
that
yeah.
was really
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Absolutely. I always welcome
yeah,
framers into my shop as well. I've had a few come
yeah,
through here, so it's always
yeah, I
open
love to.
doors.
So make a trip
Yeah.
to Mardi Gras and go see Jennifer and go say hi in her shop. So she does amazing work. And yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. So again, I'd like to express my appreciation to Jennifer McGinnis for joining us here on the Framing Chronicles. I will go ahead and post a link to Jennifer's website so you can take a look at her adorable little shop. And it is www.creativeframinggretna.com. But I'll post that link in the comments here. And I would love to have you visit her shop. And if you ever happen to be in Louisiana, and if you do have issues or need to talk about emergency preparedness or how do I do a disaster preparedness plan for my business, that's what I'm here for. I'm happy to help you do those things. Maybe come up with some things maybe you haven't considered. We can definitely go through and talk to your insurance provider, make sure that you're adequately insured, all the things. So if you need help doing that, you're not sure where to start, please reach out to me. I always give 1 hour of free consultation to any new client, and I want to see you succeed. So thank you again for joining us today on the Framing Chronicles, and I hope everything goes well for you. Prepare for those disasters. We hope they never happen, but they can. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.